Joining us now to analyze today's headlines is Rahul Mahajan. He's a sociologist and news analyst and author of Full Spectrum Dominance, U.S. Power in Iraq and Beyond. Hi, Rahul.
Happy Republic Day, Sonali.
Well, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry is visiting Nigeria just about 2 weeks ahead of a crucial election. Mr. Kerry warned, quote, "This will be the largest democratic election on the continent. Given the stakes, it is absolutely critical that these elections can be conducted peacefully, that they are credible, transparent, and accountable." Meanwhile, on Sunday, the militant group Boko Haram faced airstrikes from the Nigerian military as it attempted to take over another town in the northeastern state of Maiduguri. News reports suggest hundreds of rebel fighters may have been killed. Elsewhere in Nigeria, Boko Haram carried on its relentless takeover of towns and cities, killing, kidnapping, burning, and looting. About 800 people were killed after the last elections in 2011 when Goodluck Jonathan won. Kerry offered U.S. support in the fight against Boko Haram if the next elections are conducted without incident. Well, Rahul, what are the odds that U.S. help in Nigeria could make an already bad situation any better?
Well, the situation in Nigeria is incredibly bad. Basically, the Nigerian state, bad as it is, but still much better than what Boko Haram seems to be proposing, is incapable of dealing militarily with Boko Haram. And so the question is aid from some other countries going to actually help? My guess is that anything the United States actually does is going to have minimal effect simply because the United States is not interested in a major commitment in Nigeria, of all places. As we can see, they are avoiding commitment even in Syria and Iraq, which is right at the heart of their erstwhile imperial interests. So things are not likely to change, but it's not at all clear what is a solution for Nigeria's crisis.
And we'll go to India next, where Monday, January 26th, is actually Republic Day, as Rahul referred to earlier. President Obama is in India for a 3-day visit, cementing a solid relationship with Prime Minister Narendra Modi's right-wing government. At several meetings of multinational corporate executives, Mr. Modi vowed to reduce investment barriers, boosting projections of $100 billion worth of trade between the U.S. and India in the coming years. Obama spoke admiringly of India's, quote, untapped potential. The two leaders also agreed to a controversial nuclear deal that had been held up for years, allowing U.S. companies to supply India with so-called civilian nuclear technology. India is set to build dozens of nuclear reactors in the next few years. And on the political front, President Obama also sees a role for India in the fight against the Islamic State in Syria and northern Iraq. So jovial is the relationship between the two leaders that the Indian press has named them a Mobama. Well, Rahul, can anything good come for the environment and poor people, workers' rights, and matters of war and peace with the U.S. and India agreeing on so many fronts?
Well, the nuclear issue is a little different. It's complex because I take it as axiomatic that India, China, and other countries are going to keep on increasing their power generation capabilities, and effectively it's coming down to them for them to a choice between oil and coal. China, for example, in the last 15 years has more than trebled its coal consumption. So that's a path that is deadly for the climate. Nuclear power at least doesn't have that problem, but in the case of India, it's plagued by just rampant security lapses to just a phenomenal degree. I mean, Japan, obviously, they have institutional problems with the way they deal with nuclear power, but it's nothing on the scale of India. So unless we see some chance that that's going to be cleaned up, it's very likely that this expansion is going to lead to nuclear accidents. On other fronts, the last thing India needs and the last thing the Middle East needs is for more Indian troops to be sent to die in a Western powers imperial venture in Iraq like they did in World War I. So on most fronts, this looks like bad news.
And finally, here in the U.S., the billionaire Koch brothers are hosting a retreat in Palm Springs, California, as part of their complex of political organizations called Freedom Works. As Republican hopefuls vie for cash and influence, they faced off one another yesterday in an informal debate that included Senators Mark Rubio of Florida, Ted Cruz of Texas, and Rand Paul of Kentucky. ABC News correspondent John Carl moderated the discussion and at one point asked the panel if billionaires like the Koch brothers influenced elections far too much. Senator Rubio responded sarcastically, quote, "As opposed to Hollywood or the mainstream media, you mean, or other multi-billion-dollar entities that try to influence American politics every day?" Senator Rubio is emerging as a viable presidential candidate in a field that is already pretty crowded. Just today, New Jersey Governor Chris Christie announced his new PAC, Leadership Matters for America, signaling his interest to the wealthy that he's ready to run. Well, Rahul, how do you respond to Rubio's glib answer about the influence of money on politics?
Well, I guess even Rubio can make sort of half a point if he tries. And it is true that there's no real difference in principle between, say, David Geffen and George Soros and Bill Gates trying to influence political matters in the United States, and the Koch brothers, on the other hand, except, of course, that the Koch brothers' interventions are so narrowly focused on making money for themselves. But what he's talking about is some kind of left-right divide among billionaires and global elites. And even if there is some balance there, even if the Kochs are providing balance, which obviously they're doing more than just that, there's still the question of up versus down, of the elites versus the working class and middle class, and there we don't see any kind of balance.
Rahul, always a pleasure to have you on. We'll talk to you again next week.
See you then.
Rahul Mahajan is a sociologist and news analyst. He's also the author of Full Spectrum Dominance, U.S. Power in Iraq and Beyond. We'll be right back.